All right, so our next coffee is Yirgacheffe from Qualia Coffee.
Yes, and this is the Yirgacheffe kosher. And this is pretty exciting because, as you guys may know, Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, which is why we selected it for our first month. Um, let's go ahead and give it a sniffs. What do you think, Kev?
I know the tasting notes said a couple of things, but really what I'm only getting is the citrus.
Yeah, let's see. It says chocolate, citrus, and hint of molasses. And if you give a sniff of the grinds, I mean, it's really citrusy, and I mean, what you kind of expect from an Ethiopia coffee is that kind of like the lively brightness, you know. And I think that's where you kind of gain like the citrus peel kind of smells from the grinds.
Hmm.
Um, my coffee's kind of cooling down a little bit, so it's kind of hard to smell it now. But when I first brewed it a few minutes ago, it was really prevalent. Really bright, really exciting on your tongue almost.
Yeah,
This particular coffee doesn't have like a lot of crazy complex flavors, but it's kind of what you expect as what coffee would taste like, I think.
yeah. So on the taste, real quick, you mentioned molasses. Completely honest, what is the difference between molasses and chocolate, and how can I tell for it?
Well, I mean they're completely different because chocolate is what we've been tasting the whole time, pretty much throughout all these coffees. But molasses is kind of that sweetness after you swallow and you're kind of breathing out. You can kind of taste a little bit of sweetness on the back of your tongue.
Yeah,
It's really subtle, but can you taste that maybe?
yeah, I'm getting it. It's really refreshing actually. You got to take a pretty big gulp for us inexperienced drinkers to really get the sense of the sweetness and how refreshing it actually is.
Yeah, something to note is that if you look at the process, this is a washed coffee, and typically, especially with the Ethiopias, when they're washed, they're definitely on the lighter side. If we want to talk about body, it's definitely lighter than any of the other
Oh,
coffees we've
definitely. The body is
had.
much lighter than the Brazil or the Colombia that we had recently.
Yeah, and I guess another thing to mention when it's washed, typically African coffees are described as really earthy or kind of nutty, and I think that this one isn't quite as nutty or as earthy as you might expect, and that might be partially because of the wash process. So
Yeah,
what do you think about drinkability?
I really like this one. Maybe it's because again a bit inexperienced and only been drinking these small batch, really nice coffees in the past couple of months. But this kind of reminds me of like what a general coffee taste might taste like, but just so much better. As we said, it's brighter. The body you can definitely taste. Um, yeah, it's a good baseline for kind of tasting out the Brazil and the Colombia and all the other coffees that we'll have.
Right, and this is where coffee originated, so maybe that's why that's the
Yeah,
basis. But I like it too. It's one of my favorite baseline coffees. It's also Kenya, and these kind of go hand in hand for my go-to coffees.
cool. All right, let's try out the Yirgacheffe from Oblique and see how it measures up.